to another episode of Romance Unleashed. Today, we are on the road. We are in an undisclosed location, also known as Kandi's house. And we have Kandi Steiner here with us. Hi, Kandi.
Hi. Welcome to my home.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
I'm so excited you're here.
Me too. Tell us everything about you.
Okay, everything. Just real quickly.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, what do you want to know, like writing stuff or like?
I want to know your deepest, darkest secrets.
Deepest, darkest. Oh gosh.
Everything. Like, what's your favorite vibrator right now?
Oh, favorite vibrator. I don't even know the brand. It's purple. I can tell you that. It's in my. Do you want me to go get it? Mm-hmm. No, I'm Kandi, and I just moved to Tennessee last year, but I'm a Florida girl too, so I was in Florida for 20 years.
Wow.
And I have been writing since I was a little girl. Started out as poems about boys, so not much has changed.
Now it's love letters to boys.
Now it's love letters to fictional boys. But yeah, I've always loved writing and wrote through high school and middle school and high school. I wrote my first book in middle school and studied actually nonfiction writing in college. So I always thought I was going to write about my childhood and growing up kind of in a not so great environment and what that does to you and kind of rising above it and everything. And then I graduated and I read my first indie romance and was like, I love this. And it just flipped something in my brain. I've always been a romantic. So I started thinking about all these books that I wanted to write, and yeah, the next thing I knew, I was 10 books deep into romance and was like, I guess this is what I'm doing. That's
amazing. What was the first book that you wrote?
Tag Chaser. It's terrible. It is still available if you want to read it. But you can definitely see how my writing has grown. I was 23 when I wrote it, and I published it on my 24th birthday. As it was my New Year's resolution. I was like, I'm going to write it and I'm going to publish my book. And, I took a picture of my sorority sister wearing my then husband's dog tags. And funny enough, the first 10 copies that went out, I forgot to blur his dog tag. So it was his social security was printed on the cover. So that's how novice I was. I had no idea what I was doing. But no, I did that one. And then, there was a character in that people wanted to know what happened to him. And that was my first time where I found readers. So I did Song Chaser. And then it just grew from there.
That's so amazing.
Crazy.
What finally pushed you to be I'm writing this book, I'm publishing it?
Yeah. I was so fearless back then. It's so different, or it was so different in 2012, 2013 than it is now. I am so impressed by authors who are starting out now are they're in groups and they're researching and they are coming to conferences and they're asking other established authors questions. I didn't do any of that.
Yeah.
It's just I want to write this book. I didn't really follow any rules as far as act 1, 2, and 3 or having a climax and anything like that. I was just I'm going to write this story as I see it. And my idea came from, my ex was in the military and they used to always talk trash about these girls called tag chasers. And they were like, oh, it's these girls that hang out in bars and they just want to hook up with military dudes and get pregnant and lock them down. And I was like, wait a second. I have a feeling y'all are making this up. I don't know. To me, I was like, what's her story? What does she actually want?
Right.
So I wrote it where she was she loves military guys because there's no strings attached. And so she can have fun with them and knows that they're going to leave town the next day.
Oh, I love that.
So,
I feel in my time, when I was in the Navy, I never heard the term tag chaser.
Yeah. And it was so derogatory and just, anytime that someone's talking, can I curse?
Yeah.
Anytime someone's talking shit about a woman, I'm instantly up in arms. And I'm
what? Okay. Right. And it's funny you say when you're 23, you were so fearless back then because it's crazy how when you're younger, you really are fuck it. I'm just going to write this book and publish it. And whatever, let's see what happens. And now it's anxiety.
Yes.
Hi. Hello.
Yes. Honestly, I feel I was pretty fearless up until Blindside. Blindside was really the first time where I was oh, I actually feel I have a pretty, I've established a big audience. I have a career and things changed too because it wasn't just me anymore. Jack and I were married.
Right.
Now we're pregnant. So there's different levels to it now, and I'm older. I don't know, just things kind of shifted and evolved. But I mean, I still try to hold on to a little bit of fearlessness when it comes to what I choose to write and how I choose to write it. But I'm definitely more business oriented than I used to be. I used to just be more artistic. Whatever I wanted to write, that's what I'm going to write, which is how like A Love Letter to Whiskey was born when, you know, at the time everyone told me I was crazy for writing. They were like, you can't end a book like this. And I was like, well, I'm going to. So,
I think my introduction to you was A Love Letter to Whiskey.
Stop. Oh, you really dove in.
Yeah. I'm also like, if it's going to tear me apart, if there's angst, if there's like a forbidden, if there's like a second chance misconnection, like I really always loved you, but we can't figure it out. Like, please feed me that shit. Like, inject it, like, please. It. Yeah. So, after I read A Love Letter to Whiskey, I was a goner. I was like, give it all to me.
I love toxicity in my romance. And I don't know if it's
unfortunately, I think I also like it in my real life, but like...
I know. It's interesting because when I was writing these books, like A Love Letter to Whiskey is, I think, my most toxic, but I have other titles too, like What He Doesn't Know was one of them, and Make Me Hate You, right?
What He Doesn't Know, that's the love triangle. Or the duet.
Yeah, exactly.
The way
Marriage in Trouble.
Oh my God. I will say I had to spoil it for myself and see who she was going to pick, because if I rooted for the wrong person the whole time, I was going to be pissed. But I, like, people don't like love triangles, but I love them. I fucking love them because they're so real.
Me too. And I love, like, anytime there's cheating or, like, a little bit of a morally gray situation.
Yeah.
Especially because I think when I was younger, I was very much like, oh my gosh, there's no excuse for cheating. If you're a cheater, you're a terrible person, yada, yada. And then as I got older and I saw experiences unfolding around me with my friends, my family, myself, I was like, wow, there's a lot of layers to love.
Absolutely.
And being two adults who are maybe like not in their best healthy selves, and then finding each other, and do you find each other at the right time? There's just so much that can go into it. So I love to explore that stuff that makes you just like kind of sick, because you're like, I'm so mad at them for doing this, but I also understand it.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, and I think that's what's so like great about your books, because they are situations like you have heard of before, or you have people who have been through similar things. But coming out on the other side, I think it's like the romance of it all, right? But I feel like it makes it so realistic because it's things that like we all experience. I mean, when I was reading What He Doesn't Know, I was happily married.
Yeah.
And then I was like, but what if like the love of my life came back in today? Like, what would happen? That's great. We sell it at the store. And I'm always like, do you want to try a love triangle? Here you go.
Here's the love triangle. Yeah, and I, as a reader too, I love that feeling of like when your stomach is kind of sick while you're reading, you know? And I think it's because it takes me back to, listen, I played a lot of games when I was younger. And so I love that feeling of you're not really with that person, but maybe you're watching them across the room, or you're hanging out with your boyfriend, but the one you really want to be with is like, has his eyes on you. Like that kind of, I eat it up. So I love it so much.
Do you have any recommendations for people who also love that kind of things, aka me?
My like favorite book series in the world is by S.C. Stevens, and book one is Thoughtless. So, oh my gosh, it's incredible. It's a rock star romance, which I was like, I'm not going to be into this, but she moves in with her boyfriend and like the guys from the band, and then her boyfriend travels for a while, and one of the guys in the band and her start to like, things just start to happen. And there's this scene, I will never forget it. It's like a bunch of like college dudes, right? And so they're just like kind of like fratty and rowdy, and they are hanging out at the house, like smoking and drinking one night, and they have like porn on the TV. And they're like, oh, are you sure you can handle it? And she's like, I'm fine, like whatever. And she's sitting on the couch next to him, and they just like touch pinkies. It sounds so stupid, but I have this scene like tabbed in my, like, it is so great. It is so great. And it's the first time that it's like 100 pages in and they finally, like, you know that something's about to go
Right.
down.
They finally touch pinkies.
Oh, so good. Anyway, that one's great. Jessica Hawkins is also, like, can't go wrong with the Jessica Hawkins book. And Brittany Cherry actually does angst really well. Not quite as toxic, but some of her older books especially, she's got some delicious angst in there. So.
Okay, I'm gonna. I read the mixtape, but I think that one's in her newer.
Yeah.
And then, what is the other one called? The Air He Breathes.
Yes.
The Air He Breathes was so good
so
too.
Good. And it's gonna be a movie soon.
I know, that is so exciting. We interviewed her a couple weeks ago too, and we were talking about just like how she loves to make us cry, and I'm like, thank you. Please continue.
Please keep doing that to me.
Yeah.
Torture me.
I mean, you're also kind of guilty of this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I know, and I do feel like my writing has shifted a little bit, probably because I'm in a well-adjusted, like, healthy relationship with someone now, and you know, it does make it a little bit harder to write that. Sometimes I'll be writing something sort of toxic, and I'm like, but why wouldn't they just talk?
Right. You're right. Well, if you ever need inspiration, just ask me about, like, my latest situation, and I got you.
I mean, are you going to spill on the podcast? Is that what you're saying?
Or you know, there's just so many. Oh my God! If you're listening to this, I'm kidding.
I do have a ton of my, like, younger friends that I will, like, beg them for stories, and one of my friends is a flight attendant, and she right now is, like, in her own a love letter to whiskey situation. So she's been, like, telling me, like, little bits and pieces, and I'm just, like, hanging on. I'm like, please feed me, because this is writing inspiration. But I have so many angsty books in my brain that I still want to write. I love Marriage in Trouble. I want to do that again. And I love Right Person, Wrong Time. I think my biggest issue...
Right Person, Wrong Time
is my favorite. It's just so hard because I've done A Love Letter to Whiskey and I've done Make Me Hate You. And for me, those were both they live so powerfully in my brain that it's really hard to let go of those and write something completely new without, like, thinking about
Right.
So I've got to wait for the characters to really take over, and then I think it'll happen.
How do the stories develop for you?
Definitely character first for me. So I used to not plot at all, but now I do. And typically I spend probably 75% of my plotting time on just figuring out who the characters are. So what makes them tick? What are their Enneagram numbers? What are their zodiac signs? Like, you know, what are they scared of? What are they motivated by? So by the time I start writing, I feel like I know them as well as I know myself or my husband or my best friend, so that whenever I'm writing, whatever position I put them in, I know exactly what they're going to do. And sometimes the story kind of makes itself from what the characters are doing or what they might do to sabotage themselves, right?
Right. Do you also do the side characters when you're there?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is that how, like, series start kind of building up?
Totally. And, like, that's how I think I decide who's going to be just a side character and someone who stays in that book and kind of I leave them behind. I love you. Thank you for serving your purpose. And then I move on. Versus the ones that stay with me that I'm like, oh, they have a story. They have something I really want to explore.
Right.
You know?
You mentioned you got divorced. How was it being a romance author going through that?
Oh my gosh. You know, going through the divorce was one of the hardest things I think I ever experienced in my life. I was 26 when we separated, 27 by the time we finally got divorced. And he was my high school sweetheart, and I still to this day I have so much, like, love and respect for him. We just weren't right for each other. And when we got married really young. He was in the military. We got married kind of for the wrong reasons. Right. And then it was like, I think he expected me to change when we got married, and when I didn't, he was, like, super like surprised by it. And I was like, you've known me this whole time. And so then it was like resentment grew. It was so hard. But, you know, by the end we were fighting. It was toxic. It was not great. He had really bad anger. I was definitely, like, I'm not innocent in this either. I was very much, like, hiding stuff from him, and just, we were not happy. Right. So that sucked. But I will say it was like a renaissance for me, because I had never dated before, like, since high school. Right. So I got to go experience dating. I found out very quickly I'm not a one-night stand girly. Like, my friends are, and I love that for them. And I tried it twice and was like, I hate this. First of all, I can't get off with a guy that I don't know. Like, I got to be so comfortable with you. To be able to explore myself with you. So it's not fun for me. Secondly, I don't feel good when they don't call me the next day, or I don't know what I mean to them, or like, did they like it?
Right.
I don't know.
Right.
It's not
Right.
So I love writing about that stuff, but I found out it was not for me. And I also, through trial and error, found out what I really want in a relationship, and it's so different from what I expected. I mean, I'm like obsessed with my husband, and I don't think I ever would have dated him if I wouldn't have gone through the years that I did of like dating the duds that I found. You know what I mean?
The duds.
But it was really funny. We met on Bumble, and I put that I was a writer in my bio, and he was like, "So what do you write?" And I was like, "I write romance books." And
that's like a real test.
It's a real test. And he was like, "Wait, what? Like, can I read one? Can you he was asking all the right questions.
Right.
And even now, I mean, he goes to book signings with me. He's part of my business, and he is like full on support when I feel like a lot of men cannot be, right? Like a lot of men have a really big opinion about it. I mean, look at all the guys talking trash on TikTok right now. Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was hard. It was hard in a way. I dated a guy for a year who eventually broke up with me because he was like, "I'm too religious for you," basically. Yeah, I was like, "Oh, it took you a year to figure that out."
Right.
Anyway. So it's really interesting because I think people have an opinion on it before they even know much about it. And it's way different now than it was even 5 years ago.
Right. Absolutely.
So
was it hard writing, going through those hardships?
Oh no, it was great.
Yeah.
It was great. The like inspiration was just flowing because I feel like I can write, and I love to write when I'm heartbroken or when I'm angsting inside, right?
Yeah.
And so a lot of my books that I wrote, like my single books, Revelry, On the Way to You, What He Doesn't Know, What He Always Knew, all of these books that really brought The Wrong Game was the one I published right after that guy broke up with me.
Okay.
So there was a lot of angst, and like I wrote A Love Letter to Whiskey at the end of my marriage when I like felt things deteriorating. So it was really like exploring that, what if this situation would have happened?
Right.
Or I had a lot of friends around me too who were in that right person, wrong time kind of vibe in their life. And I was like, oh, this feeling, we can all connect. We all have a whiskey.
Yeah.
I think everyone has a whiskey. Even if it's not as intense as it was in the book.
Right.
You have someone who you were like,
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. I think I have many someones, but yeah. I'm just like a lover girl through and through. So I feel like, I think I fall in love with potential a lot because I could see it. I see the best in you. Like I could see you here, but it's taken me a really long time to realize that until you're not ready to be here. Like I can't do anything to push you to get there.
No.
And so like really managing like my expectations of people has been probably like the hardest work because I just like see the best. So like, why are you not at your best?
It's the hardest too when they find that after you're out of the picture.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. It's like gut wrenching because you can see it.
Right.
But you can't get them there until they're ready. And then like you'll see them like years down the road, like married, having kids, and you're like, oh, they did figure it out.
I've also like seen something on TikTok that said something like men don't marry like the person that they're in love with. They marry the person who's in front of them when they're ready. Dude. And I'm like, interesting. So how many did I get ready? And can I bill you now for
what is it, that movie that's like, was it Good Luck Chuck or whatever, that it's the guy that I think it's not Ryan Reynolds, it's someone who looks like Ryan Reynolds, and I'm blanking on his name, but it's like every girl that he dates and breaks up with, they end up getting married right after him. And so he ends up having girls like come to him and be like, I want to date you because I'm like ready to get married.
Well, that's like the Abby Jimenez's the last one, Just for the Summer. That's like they meet on a Reddit thread because they are both like, everyone after me finds their happily ever after, and they're like, so maybe if we date each other, we will we will counter that, and we will each find the right person for us, and then obviously they fall in love.
I love that.
Obviously.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. Yeah, it's interesting. I think dating is terrible, but also amazing, right? Like Some of my best memories of my life were when I was heartbroken and single. I was living downtown Tampa at the time, and I just remember so many nights of like crying or like watching How to Be Single or watching like Eat, Pray, Love, and having these moments of clarity of, you know, I have my girlfriends and I have myself and I have my writing and I have so much in life. And those sort of discoveries, I think, made me ready for Jack, right? Like, I was ready to turn my back on toxic relationships and find someone who actually was what I wanted in a partner. Yeah. I thought that I wanted that, like, exciting, toxic, like, gut-churning feeling, which is fun. Right. But it's not what I actually want for stability for my life, you know? Right.
And they say, you know, you have, like, 3 loves in your lifetime. Yeah. Like, your first love, your like soulmate, and then the person you marry. And usually the person you marry is not the person that was that gut punch, right? Like that roller coaster in your stomach, but they are who you are meant to spend your life with, who's like the perfect partner for you. And I always have a hard time with that because I'm like, well, but I feel like I want to marry that middle, right? Like that, like, take my breath away kind of love that you read in all your books, right? But then you're like, but do I?
Yeah. Yeah. It's hard. And I mean, and sometimes I think they can roll into one. Yeah. Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
It just depends on so many factors. Right. And I mean, Jack and I talk about this all the time, how many things had to happen for us to meet at the time that we did and be ready for each other at the time that we did. And it's like a freak accident. Like, it should not have happened. In no way did it make sense that we were both, I was only on Bumble for 2 days because I hated it. And I just so happened to like be in the same place as him at that time, and we matched. I gave my number to him and one other guy, and it just took off from there. I also met him after I went on a solo road trip out west. I like rented a van in Colorado, drove all through the Rockies, down into the desert, up through Zion and stuff, and camped by myself and drove by myself and spent like, I don't know if you've ever spent time by yourself, like completely alone. It's hard. Yeah. But in a great way. Yeah. And I just felt like at the end of that trip, by the time I got back, I was so clear on who I was and what I wanted that the red flags that I used to ignore or say I can fix him. Yeah. No, really I can't. Yeah.
No, really I can. Like, what do you mean?
It was gone. It was like eviscerated, and now I would see the red flags and immediately be like, well, I don't have time for this, and I know exactly where this is going. I can see it before it happens. I'm not wasting my time. So what I loved about Jack was that I had the butterflies. I had the like, oh my God, he's cute. Oh my God, I'm gonna see if he holds my hand, whatever. Yeah. But I also never had to guess what I was to him. So there was, my anxiety was like extinguished.
And that is so important. Oh my gosh. That is so important. That's like, I feel like the most important of it all, like not ever having to guess your place in that person's life.
I think when someone knows your anxiety or figures it out, and then instead of figuring out ways to push buttons to make it worse, finds ways to like ease it. I mean, it was a game changer for me. I didn't even know that was possible. Yeah. So, you know, when I felt like I was being too much, when I was like having those moments of crying or being unsure, instead of him being like, you're so annoying, or, you know, or
you're crazy,
he would just like hold me and be like, I'm right here. I'm not going anywhere. I really like you. I'm in this too. I don't care that you're divorced. I don't care that you do pole. I don't care that you're a romance author. Like, I'm in it. Here, you know?
I love that.
I mean, I'm not even a words of affirmation girly, but it's like, sometimes I think we all need a little bit of reassurance. I also started going to therapy, which probably helped, but...
Have you been able to do any pole while you're pregnant?
Yeah, I have. I just stopped. I think the last time I did pole, I was 33 weeks. Wow. So the tricks went first. They went quicker than I expected just because I got really bottom heavy. Yeah. Right? Like my belly, my hips, my thighs. Right. And so it was harder to get upside down. It was harder to do some of those things. But I danced all the way up until like 33 weeks. And now I do yoga, I walk, and I go to the gym. So...
That's amazing. I tried pole for a bit, and I just have bad carpal tunnel. So like now I'm working with a chiro to like, because after doing pole, I probably did it for like 2 months. Like all of this would like tighten up so bad. But oh my God, I absolutely loved it.
It's so fun,
It
right?
is so fun. It's fun and it's empowering. And like you're like realize the like things your body can do. And it just feels so freeing. It's great.
It's amazing. I think that was definitely part of me coming into feeling comfortable with myself too, because I was doing pole, and I mean, I don't know if you were the same way, but the first pole class I showed up to, I was like in a baggy t-shirt and like biker shorts. And then now I work out in like a thong and pasties. I'm so comfortable with my body and my sexuality, which I think I suppressed a lot from growing up in a very religious place, and also just unsure of like, is being sexual, should I feel guilty for being sexual? Because I mean, let's be honest, a lot, not just men, but women too, a lot of people use your sexuality against you.
Absolutely.
And they weaponize it. So it's terrifying for so long. But then I through pole, through writing romance, through reading romance, I just realized like, wait a second, I can take that and own that and be, I can take that power.
Yeah.
And then I don't care if someone calls me a slut when they see my pole dance videos. I'm like, okay, good for you. Do you feel better?
Yeah. Like, right. I actually I will say I would post some of like my videos on my stories, like when I was like trying out things. And I fully looked like a rotisserie chicken, like twirling on a pole. Like it's just what it was. There was nothing cute about it, but I loved watching my progress, because every video I would post, I'd get a little better. Like if I couldn't get my foot up on a certain position. And I had a guy who just like sent me a video of him masturbating. And I was like, okay, first of all, sir, I look like a rotisserie chicken. So I don't even understand like what you're turned on by here, but also what is wrong with y'all? Like, why is pole dancing or posting like how does that open a door for you to send a video of you masturbating? Dude. Like,
and they wonder why I would choose the bear. Like
please give me all the bears.
Give me all the bears.
Like. And
it's so crazy.
I think we see it over and over again too, right? With like romance and Given. I feel like the romance space has changed a lot in the past couple of years, but I feel like kind of what we just talked about earlier, like when you told someone you're a romance author, what was their reaction to that, right? Mm-hmm. And now that I'm on that end of like dating, when I tell people like I own a romance bookstore, and they're like also sex books, and I'm like, no, like actually some of them fade straight to dark. Like there's nothing there. They're like, no, but they're sex books. And I'm like, but this conversation's over. Like,
dude. And that's what frustrates me so much is people who say stuff like that. They've never read a romance book. They think, and I love E.L. James. I'm so proud of her and what she did for our community and how she sort of paved the way for us. And I get frustrated because people who either only read her books or didn't even read them, they just like made a broad generalization based on the movies, based on the hype, whatever, that, oh, if you write romance or you read romance, this is what you're reading, and there's no substance and there's no whatever. And I'm like, there was such a great story in her books if you were there for it and actually read the books. And in every romance book, like, when I have book clubs with my Candylanders, my like Facebook group, when we have book clubs and we talk about my books, the sex scenes don't even come up. Like, no one's like, oh my God, and the popsicle scene with Daddy Pete, even though it's like, yeah, that was fun.
I mean, even though we enjoyed it,
it's fun. It was about like, oh my gosh, I loved that, Chloe really worked through everything that was going on with her mom and her grandma. Right. Or I felt really seen by Will, going through the grief of losing his wife and then trying to learn to love again. Or I loved seeing Ava, open up as a little girl and like find her joy, whatever. It's a human experience. We love to read about love in different ways, and falling in love. Gosh, it's like the best feeling in the world. Most of us, we fall in love, we marry them. Yeah. Why not just like still experience that feeling over and over and over again through books,
Like romance books have such a like, there's such like universal feelings that we all experience or want to experience. Yes. Like, so it's always beyond me when it like, no, you're sexualizing it, because it does like romance and love, nudity do not equal sex. No. So
also, like, even if that's the case, like I just read my first Katie Roberts. It's like primarily smut. I freaking loved it. And I was like, why is that an issue? Like, it shouldn't be an issue. And the reason it is because it's a woman, right? It's a woman writing it. It's a woman reading it. And it's like, how dare you have pleasure? How dare you like put your pleasure first? How dare you seek it out? That's not like, that's not ladylike or whatever. Right. And meanwhile, guys will do whatever they want and they'll sexualize a girl walking down the street in a skirt. Yeah. you know, like, so I don't know. I think especially as I get older and now I'm about to have a daughter and I'm just like thinking about her coming up and I want her to feel comfortable to come to me and talk about these things. And I don't ever want her to feel guilty for anything that she's figuring out, like when she's younger or as she grows older. And I would love her to read romance books and learn about sex and love through that, as opposed to the many ways that I learned how to love, which, was mostly watching toxic shit unfold around me. So,
snoring full on.
But are we disturbing your nap? She worked a full shift.
Yeah, I feel like we everything we learn about sex through school or our friend groups are one, very inaccurate, two, or very incomplete. Yeah. Three, I feel like it very much focuses on a man's pleasure and never a woman's, and like women are just.
I'm tired. Fine. Hey, can you come here? You're snoring and it's interrupting the podcast. She's like, I'm not moving.
She's like, no, what are you talking about?
It's okay. Yeah. Okay, you probably can't hear it.
It'll be a little ASMR.
Okay. Yeah.
She's so cute.
No, but I what I hated when I was growing up, and I still feel like this message is pushed a little bit, but it was all like the responsibility of sex was on the woman and all the pleasure was on the man, right? And it was like, oh, men can't help it. Men have needs, like yada, yada. So it's up to you to take birth control. It's up to you to be chaste. It's up to you to not tempt them. It's up to you to not do all these things. Yeah. And I've always been a very sexual person. So for me, this felt like robbery. I was like, wait, so I can't be fully who I am. And again, until I realized, like, oh, people saying what they want to say about me has no power unless I give it power. Right. But that's a really hard lesson to learn that usually you don't learn until you're much older and kind of your give a fuck start to break. Right. Right. But when you're young and you're an impressionable girl, it's really, really hard to explore your sexuality without feeling all kinds of guilt about it.
Absolutely. I feel like a lot of my early 20s were that just like I didn't want to be looked at a certain type of way because I was more sexual than other people, or because like I expressed myself differently than other people. And then I got married and, that kind of just went out the window. And now, actually I would say probably through like Steamy Lit, I started finding that again, and through romance books. But I also think that this is why my marriage ended. I don't think it was the primary. I don't think it was a primary reason, but I do think that there was a shift there of me going on a journey that he just couldn't come, and it wasn't perhaps what he wanted, because I was going on a journey where I'm very open about my sexuality. I'm gonna post an ass picture. I'm gonna be on pole dancing like a chicken in my, like I'm gonna be talking about vibrators and pleasure, and I just don't think that was a journey for him to come on. Yeah. So I think as I look for the next person, it is very important for me, for them to know straight away, like,
this is what you're getting.
This is what you're getting. And if it's too much for you, if like it's not proper, if you're too religious, like, also why is there like religion does not equal sexuality, right? Yeah. Because like I very much consider myself a woman of God. I'm still fucking.
Yeah, for
Sorry,
sure.
God. Like, so it's like a really interesting, and this off topic, but not really. When I read Priest by Sierra Simone, I grew up Catholic, and I had to put the book down for a bit because I was like,
is it triggering?
I have to unpack so much, just because there was like so much that I was raised on that's like, this is how it's supposed to be. But like Sierra's just like throwing it all out the window, burning it up on fire. And after I read it, I was like, wow.
It's amazing.
I love this.
Yeah. I love that. Testing the boundaries of those things that we grew up with or that we thought, oh, I love it. And yeah, I mean, I think, well, first of all, I didn't realize you were also divorced. And so, yeah, I agree with you in the sense that I think romance books romance writing played a part in my relationship ending too. And a big part of it was that I just realized I had settled. Right. And I was all of a sudden asking myself, like, is this really what I want? No, it's not. And I was asking for what I wanted and what I needed. He didn't want to meet me on that. And again, he had like a traditional marriage in mind, which is fine. There are many men and women who love that dynamic. Yeah. They want that. It just wasn't ever going to be me. And so, you know, I remember when Weightless, the cover reveal happened for Weightless. And Weightless was my first bestseller. Okay. When the cover reveal happened, this was back in the Facebook days. And so Angie's Dreamy Reads shared my cover reveal, and it was like this huge deal. I was like, oh my gosh, Angie shared my cover reveal. I'm getting all these ads on Goodreads. I have a really good feeling about this. Yeah. And we were in the car, and I looked at my husband, and I was like, what if I could actually do this? Like, what if I could actually write for a living? Like, I think I might have this in me. Yeah. And he was like, oh, well, I'd like to play basketball for a living, but, you know, we got to be realistic. Bro's 5'10", bro. Like, come on, stop it.
Oh my God.
Like,
also, how dismissive of like...
Very dismissive, right?
Like, even... I just couldn't fathom saying that to someone who I love, who is sharing what their passion and dream is. Like, even if in the back of my head, I'm like, could it be attainable? Sure. Will it be a hard journey? The words are not...
How could you... I know. And it was such an eye-opening moment for me where I was like, this is this man who says he loves me, or, you know, we're married, we said these vows to each other, but I don't know that this is love. It's not the love I'm writing about. It's not the love I'm reading about, right? And I mean, do I think it's sometimes unfair to measure, like, in real life men against bookmen? Of course. Like, bookmen are written by women. It's a fantasy, right? We're literally writing them as these perfect human beings, and that's just not realistic. Sure. Right? But at the same time, do I think that men should be held to a higher standard than what they traditionally have been? 100%. Right. And I think that's something that romance is showing. And, like, look at all the girlies that, you know, book girlies who are married or who do have boyfriends that they're really serious with. And they're supportive and they're lovely and they're, you know, it's like, it's teaching us to be okay with, like, saying no to the red flags, right, and saying yes to the green ones, which I think is really cool too. Because then you see people in relationships where it's like, it's not fake happy. It's not like posting your family picture on Facebook, right, happy. It's like, no, legit. When you see them in real life, you're like, oh, they have it. Right. You know? Right.
Yeah. And I think through romance books, like, even though, sure, right, like, you are writing a perfect character to an extent, I feel like even a lot of the things that they do are just a bare minimum. Yeah. Just a bare minimum. And, like, that's just it. And sometimes when I hear men especially say, like, well, it's unrealistic, like, Is it? Because, like, I'm just asking for communication. Really? Like, I'm like, maybe words of affection every now and then. Like,
I'm saying, like, go read the reviews for my hockey series that's out, right? No one is saying, like, oh, I love that Vince is so rich. Like, I love that they drive these nice cars. Right. I love that they're professional hockey players. Right. It's like, oh, he knows she loves plants, and so he made pots for her plants and gave her a plant room in his house. Right. Like, or whatever. Or, oh, you know, Will communicated with her and told her what he needed. Or, I don't know, whatever. It's just, like, again, things that are not that hard, right, not unrealistic. Yeah. We're not asking you to be the billionaire. We're asking you to be soft.
Like if you took out of the book that I want you to be a billionaire, you got it wrong. You got to reread the whole book again, because that's the problem here.
Dude, it's so true. It's really interesting, and I do think a lot of it, right, is probably, like, male insecurity, right, and things that they need to kind of work through, right. But we all have that, which is why I think we love romance books where both characters come to the table with their own messes too, right? No one wants to read about two, like, fully adjusted, super healthy characters falling in love, right? Because that's not realistic for any of us. We all have our own shit. We all have baggage. So it's more like, can you see me with my baggage and love me anyway? And like help me, like I'm not putting it on you.
Right.
I'm not saying you have to carry my baggage for me or like sort through my shit.
Right.
But can you be there with me while I do it?
Right.
You know?
Right.
Like that's
and
love.
You know what? It's funny because I see this kind of like trend right now in dating of like on men's profiles, there's always like, if you're not healed, don't whatever. And I hear you to an extent, right? Like if you have very deep trauma, whatever, there's things you need to work through.
Yeah.
But also, isn't the beauty of relationships being with someone, again, like you said, I'm not asking you to carry it. I'm just asking you to be there while I carry it.
Can you hold space for it?
Right.
Yeah.
And if you can't do that, I feel like that's already showing me that you're so individualistic going into a relationship that there's no space for me.
I have so many friends who have like a list of what they expect a man to bring to the table for them. Like a certain degree of education, how tall he is, how much he makes, I don't know, whatever, all these things. He's got to be funny. He's got to be able to go out and drink with my friends. He's got to be able to blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, I don't know that this is actually what you really want in a relationship. Right. You could find a guy who crosses all these things off what your imaginary list is, and then they are... you know, they have their own baggage that they've never worked through. They are narcissistic. They gaslight you. They whatever. But they're a fun time at a party. Right. And they're hot. Right. Is that really what matters to you? I don't know. Right. But I think if we can take a step back and like have space for people who are not all the way there yet, but see, again, like we talked about, see the potential. Right. Especially if that person also is coming to the table and saying, I have self-awareness. I know this about myself, and I'm in therapy, and I'm, or like, it doesn't even have to be that severe. It could just be like, I'm aware and I'm working through it, and like, I really appreciate you being patient with me while I do. Right. You know? Communication. Like, literally. Communication. And how nice, like we all joke about our anxiety or our depression or whatever, but how nice to be able to be open with your partner about that and be like, man, I'm feeling pretty depressed today, and be like, what can I do? Right. As opposed to like, well, snap out of it. Right. Or like, that's not my problem. Right.
Did you read Brittany's latest book, The Problem with Players?
Yes. Oh, on her days she couldn't get out of bed.
Oh my God. So that was so good. And it felt so real I feel like the depiction of depression and what it looks like for some of us. And then also just like having a partner who's like, I got you. Yes. And not just like...
He wasn't like, we got to get out of the house. We got to get you happy. Right. Like, whatever. It was like, okay.
It was like, no, I'm just going to hold you here. And I'm gonna be here. That's it. Yeah.
So great. And I mean, again, I think there's a balance between it. And the biggest thing I think is self-awareness. Because we've all been with people who have their stuff that maybe we held too much space for. Right. Absolutely. And they maybe took advantage of that. I know that's happened to me a lot. I think that happens if you're a nice person. If you give the benefit of the doubt to a lot of people. Right. Right. But I don't agree with flipping the opposite way and closing your heart off and like being cold and being like, I don't trust anybody and everyone's trash. Yeah. Because then you miss out on all these really genuine, beautiful human connections, friends, boyfriends, girlfriends, whatever. Yeah. And I feel like even if I've met a good amount of duds, but,
I think even in some of those, like I've created a genuine connection that won't go anywhere, but it was like you're experiencing a person, right? 100%. And like, isn't that the point of being alive? Yeah. Like, and I battle with this a lot because like I wear my heart on my sleeve. I'm ready to like openly love anyone, and I always battle with, do I just turn the other way, right? Like, I'm not just flip a switch, but I don't think I would be happiest that way, and I think I've just kind of come to the conclusion that like, because of the way I carry myself, I'm going to get hurt along the way, but I don't want to have it any other way because I don't want to love people any less.
This is why we love that toxic feeling and that heartbroken feeling, because we've been there so many times. Like we love each other we love people so hard. Right. And I think there's something really beautiful about that. Like people can call it stupid. They can call it naive. They can say whatever they want, but we have felt every range of emotion multiple times. Like I do feel like I think in A Love Letter to Whiskey I have a line about like the pain reminds you that you're alive, right? And it does. It's like, I've never felt more alive than those times when I've been heartbroken on the floor of an apartment by myself and having to like pick myself up again. And yes, like there's beautiful, happy, joyous moments in life, but I would not appreciate them if I hadn't experienced the heartbreak of losing someone who was almost there. Yeah. Right? Like someone who you love and you're like, you are so close to being this person I know you can be, but you just can't quite get there. Right. You know? Yeah. I dated a guy. We never officially. It was one of those. We're not dating, but like we are dating. Yeah. For like 9 months.
The best kind of situationships. The
best situationships for sure. And even though we never like made it official thing, and I always knew what I was and what I wasn't to him. I learned so much about myself from being around him, and I loved like all the lessons that I learned from him, and I still carry them with me. Yeah. Today. Like I love that he didn't have to be the one. You know, right. He could just be one
right now. Life. Yeah. And I think that's where, I think that's the important lesson, right? Like sometimes we try to hold on to people for longer than they're supposed to be in our lives. And I think obviously it's hard when you care about someone to like let them go in that sense. But I think figuring that out, that it's okay. We were right, and that's how I feel very much about my ex-husband. Like we were right for each other when we needed to be, and we both grew to be other people. And it was okay to let that go because we're both gonna end up where we need to end up, you know?
There's like a poem or a saying or something. It's like it's a season, a reason, or a lifetime, right? Like, and I think that can be true for every friendships too. I heard your podcast talking about like friends who come and go right in your life and letting go of friendships. And that is a hard lesson learned for people like us who want to hold on and who love so fiercely. Yeah. It's almost harder to walk away from a friendship than it is to like divorce a significant other.
I've been joking about this for like a couple months now, but like my latest friendship breakup, I was like, I've never cried over a man who I never fucked like this much. Like I don't get it. And it's because I feel like when you are in those the friendship breakups just hit so different.
They hit so hard. And it's, I mean, any sort of relationship like that where you think it's going to be a forever thing and then it's not. Man, that's really tough. And I know like when I got married, I was like, there's no way I'm ever going to get divorced. And same thing when I've had friends that I'm like, we're going to be friends forever. I can tell them anything. They can tell me anything. And it's so heartbreaking to watch that deteriorate and like not be able to save it. Right. Yeah. I used to give this analogy to my therapist with one of my friends. I was like, I feel like she is like, I'm on a boat safe. She's in the water drowning and I have this lifesaver and I keep throwing it to her. And it's landing right next to her, but she won't grab onto it. And she's just flailing and she's like, I'm drowning. And I'm right here, but I can't do this. I can't save her. She's got to save herself. Yeah. And walking away from that and like realizing that you can only do so much and you can't carry their load. Like it's so tough, especially when you want to. Yeah.
Especially when you want to. I feel like there's people in my life that I'm like, if you just let me carry this for you, we could be everything. Yeah. But you have to let them carry it themselves because if not, there's going to come a point in time where that also breaks you.
Yes. And that's a good point. Cause like then, you know, on the flip side, if they do let you carry it for them, how long, forever? Like, you know, does that do they ever find the motivation to figure out how to do it on their own?
Right. And I think that's kind of what we were talking about potential, right? Like until they can't see it for themselves, there's nothing that we can do without always carrying it for them. Because sure, there might be cases where like people come into themselves and realize like what that is. But I feel like for the most part, you're just going to be the one carrying the load now and figuring out how to carry it for both of you.
Dude. And nobody wants to sign up for that.
No. And I think maybe when people say like, you have to be healed, maybe that's kind of the experience that they think they're signing up for. But if I read that on your profile, I'm not even gonna match you because I'm in therapy, bro.
Like, yes, and you should be too. Like figure it out.
I'm like healing is not. It doesn't stop. No, it's an ongoing process because you don't know if the healing I did yesterday will be dismantled today because something triggered it, right?
100%.
So it keeps going. So when someone says like you have to be healed, I'm like shit. I don't know who you're gonna find because if you think you're fully healed, you're
not doing the work. Like, you're not doing the work. Yeah, I feel like there was a good stretch of time where I was going to my therapist and we had gone down to like, it was like once every other month just because I didn't have a whole lot I was so happy. I was like, everything is going great. But I would still keep that appointment with her. And sometimes I would just talk about like happy things. And it was just like, so this is the update on my life. That's all I really have to talk about. Yeah. Right. And I'm so glad I kept up with that because when I got pregnant, that's a whole new now I have a whole new, like, I'm like, oh, there actually are some more things in my childhood trauma that we need to expose because now I'm about to be a mom. Right. And I'm about to have a little girl watching me. And I know I have daddy issues. I've been well aware of them my whole life. But I didn't realize how many, like, mommy issues that I have. And I love my mom. We're best friends. We are so close. I have so much respect for her. But I also grew up with a mom in the 90s and early 2000s who was doing her best, but also gave me a lot of complexes without knowing it, right? About my body, about sexuality, about what marriage should be, like so many things that I had to sort of unlearn. And I'm like, how do I parent a young woman and make her feel empowered and make her feel like her body's just a body and that she's so much more interesting than that. And all of those things that I want to make sure that I have for her. So now it's like therapy's back in action, right? Like we've got a lot to work through. Yeah, I think similar to like my relationship with my mom. Again, I love her, but I feel like those years, man, I don't know what they put in their food, but like the amount of like body comments, like even when they're talking, like my aunt and my mom with each other, they're like, oh, la flaquita, like the skinny girl. And I'm like, why? Like, why do we have to describe people by their bodies? Like, can we unlearn that? And can we do it all together? Because, like, every time you see me and they're like, oh, you're a little skinnier, like, that doesn't do anything for me. No. So, please, like, don't comment on it. Right. And I mean, my mom was, you know, it's all, I know in her mind, it's all out of love. But I remember coming home from college one year for Christmas and her just being like, you know, are things okay? I know I could like see you've gained weight and I could just tell that it's really hurting you and I can tell you're upset. And I was so I was like having a great time at college. And I'm like, wait, I'm just drinking, Mom. Like I'm just drinking beer every night. And then when I started like finding fitness that worked for me, my body really started responding. And so I started losing weight. And I remember going home and her being like, you're too skinny. You can't lose any more weight or you'll look disgusting. Like, you don't want to be bones. You don't want to be, and I'm like, okay. So first I was too fat. Now I'm too skinny. Can I just like live? Like, right. Exist? Right. And she still makes comments about my body, but now I talk to her about it, and I know it's her, right? Like in her mind, she's thinking about her body all the time, right? And that breaks my heart. I'm like, neither one of us should be thinking about our bodies this much, right? Unless we're like in a health situation that needs addressing, right? Absolutely. But if you're happy, Mom, and you're a little fluffy, guess what? Fluffy grandmas are the best, right? We love a fluffy grandma. There's I agree. My mom does that often too, and what you said like hits so hard, like that it all goes back to them, and that is so sad. Like my mom's almost 70, and I'm like, why are you still seeing yourself in this way? And no one in her life looks at her like that. Like everyone who loves your mom loves her. They're not looking at her body. Right. You know? Yeah. And I think I had to talk to her about it too, because I was like, if you mention my weight one more time, like I'm just not gonna call, because like you need to unlearn that. Like and from time to time she'll still do it, but it has definitely gotten a little bit better because she knows like we're not doing this anymore because you're not helping. Like, trust me, I know the body that I am in. So whatever you're seeing, trust me, I'm feeling it too. Like I don't also need to hear anything, whether good, whether bad, or whatever you consider good or bad. For sure. And if I do want to talk about my body, I will come to you with that. Right. You know? Right. And at that point, I still don't want you to say anything. Right. Just hold space for me to work through. Exactly. I mean, one of the hardest parts of this pregnancy, like the hardest part of this pregnancy, is watching my body change in ways that I have no control of, right? I mean, I've worked out through this whole thing. I went into it like, oh, I'm going to make sure I'm like eating exactly what I'm supposed to eat, all the fruits, all the veggies, all the whatever. Yeah. And I've gained 55 pounds in this pregnancy. And my doctor told me when I went in, you know, I only expect you to gain 15 to 20. I gained that by like week 20. And I was like, oh my God, I'm failing my child. I'm failing myself. And then you look at social media and it's like, you know, tiny girls with just a bump, right? And it's like, it's so hard. It was constant every day and still is for me to turn that part of my brain off and be like, you know what? your body is making another body. Like, your body is doing so much. And if it needs to, like, gain weight to do that, if you're storing fat to feed the baby or to feed yourself, or just because you really like Oreos right now,
right.
that's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay. But it was so hard. And I've had so many moments of, like, breaking down, crying, and, you know, fortunately, I have safe spaces. Like, Jack is a great safe space for me to talk about how I'm feeling without having any judgment or any sort of guidance of, like,
right. Oh, let's do this differently. Right.
But, like, how sad that I'm creating life, and there's this part of my brain that was trained from when I was young,
right,
to be focused on, like, oh, you're pregnant and gaining weight. What a travesty. Well, of course you are. You're pregnant.
Right.
It's crazy.
And I think we don't sit with that enough. Like, we don't sit with, like, you're making a whole human. Like, bones are growing, like a brain is developing,
kidneys, liver,
like heart, like,
dude, it's crazy.
I don't think that because it's become such a, like, oh, women have children, right? Like,
and you're still expected to do everything that you did before you were pregnant,
right?
At the same productivity.
Please.
If not more.
Yeah.
Because you got to prove you're super mom. You can't just be a mom.
No.
You can't just be pregnant. You've got to be super pregnant.
Yeah. Like, if you're not writing your book while you're pushing your kid out.
Right. What are you even doing?
What really is the like,
know,
no.
do you know Laura Pavlov?
I don't know her, no.
Okay. She's an indie romance author. Beautiful human, beautiful soul. And she has been, like, mama number 2 to me through this. She has been so good at just reminding myself to give myself grace. Like, on the days when I couldn't write, or the days that I, like, I don't know, was just like, I don't want to go to the gym today. Like, I'm exhausted. And she's like, you are pregnant. You do not have to, like, without doing anything else, just getting out of bed, you've, like, run a marathon.
Yeah.
Like, your body is doing so much.
Yeah.
And it's been amazing to, like, for me to experience it, and also have grace for other women around me, because I was also, before I got pregnant, in the same camp of, like, oh, she's pregnant. Right. Cool. Like, just moving on.
Right.
No, it's incredible. If you're pregnant and you got out of bed today, I applaud you.
Right. Like that's all you had to do today.
That's all you
really.
had to do.
Right. Like, all these other expectations, throw them out the window.
And even if you got out of bed and moved to the couch and that was your day. Yeah. Still doing amazing.
Yeah.
Could you imagine if men had to be pregnant?
Is that there wouldn't be a population.
The world would be.
Me and my mom talk about this all the time, and we've come to the conclusion, like, that's why they didn't give men childbearing capabilities, because we wouldn't have humanity.
No.
Like, we'd still be, like,
I can't even imagine.
Population of, like, 10 per town or something.
And it's even worse, like, you know, we don't have to steer into politics, but it's even worse in the United States, because, like, just for instance, in Germany, you get, like, 3 years per kid off of work. Like, and you can start it at any point in your pregnancy. So imagine if you could just, like, be pregnant, have a baby, have them for 2 years, and then go back to work.
Imagine that.
Like, and it's like expected, and everyone's like, you know, do you?
I couldn't even imagine a United States like that.
No, me neither.
No,
me neither.
No,
it's like, oh, so I know you just had that kid 3 weeks ago. You're ready to come back to work.
Right. Like, actually, I know you just pushed, but can you?
There's an email.
Yeah, like. You need to send out ARCs to your ARC team. So, like, what are you doing?
Yeah. I will say, like, I mean, I just had a book come out earlier this month in July. And my next book isn't until November. And for, like, anybody in the traditional
space, lot.
That's normal.
Yeah, that's more than normal. That's, like, I feel like you bust out.
For sure.
You've done already, what, 1 or 2 this year?
So I've done 2 this year. So I did Learn Your Lesson and False Start.
Okay.
And so Save Your Breath will be the 3rd. But even that is kind of stressful, because I'm like, it doesn't sound like it, but from July to November is such a long time in book world, especially indie book world, right? And I'm like, don't forget about me. I'm still here. and it's like, it does. It kind of messes with your mind a little bit. But I'm just one of those people that I've always been this way. Balance is so important for me, especially between life and success, like, quote unquote success, right? For me, I'm always going to choose being present with my family, my friends, making sure my mental is okay. And so if that means I got to take 5 or 6 months in between a book so that I can have a baby, I'm gonna do it. You know?
Yeah.
But it's hard, because then you watch other people in the industry, and I have to tell, there's a lot of newer authors especially, they get a little bit caught up with the comparison monster, and it will cripple them. because they're like, why aren't my books in the top 10? Why am I not hitting number 1? Why am I not getting the print only deal? Why am I not hitting New York Times and getting a billboard? Whatever.
Right.
It could go on and on and
Right.
on, right? And I'm like, but look at what you do have. You wrote a book. You wrote a book, period.
Right.
That's the end of that
Right.
sentence,
Right.
and it's amazing.
Yeah.
You published it. You've got readers reading it.
Right.
So if you can redefine your success and what it means to you, I think you can find so much joy in this industry. But if you're only focused on what you don't have or what you think you should be achieving that you're not,
right.
it's like, why do it?
Yeah.
Like, you're going to be miserable all the time.
Right.
So anyway, that's been on my mind a lot lately, thinking about like, oh my gosh, I have five or 6 months in between releases. And then I'm like, wait, it's really going to be okay.
Yeah.
It's going to be fine.
Yeah. I am very much of the, like, I don't know how to slow down. And my therapist was like, no more businesses, like no more like things, like you need and then I did more things. I started a podcast, whatever. But I think too, because they're laughing because they're constantly like, no, enough. Can we stop?
Yes.
But I think it's also because like work fuels me and it doesn't always drain me. Like there's parts of what I do that given exhaust me, but there's also parts that really fuel me. And I actually saw Katie Robert like do a thread on this when people tell her like, relax, slow down, take a break. And she's like, what work means to you does not mean the same thing for me. And I resonated with that so deeply because absolutely finding a balance is important. And I think that maybe as you get older, you start like, now I'm like, oh, like I just want to be here at dinner. Like I don't want to do anything else. And like being present has become very important, but work does fuel me in a way that maybe it doesn't for others, but I think it's because I'm very much working in my purpose. And I know that that's not what ends up happening for a lot of people. And I know that I am blessed in that sense. And I think that that's why some people just can't see it that way.
Yeah. I mean, work is something that moves you. You're passionate about, you love it. Right. And again, it can be seasons in your life too. Like when I was single and I was writing, it was a fever dream. It was like, I would write for hours and hours every day. I was writing at night. I would just like pour up some whiskey and write until 2 a.m.
Right.
And because that was it. I was married to my writing. I was married to that. Right. And then I had to like go and fall in love and get married. And now I'm having a baby and things are just shifting.
Right.
A little
and
bit.
That's okay.
And it's okay. But I love that. Like, this is what I love about writing. I have little snapshots of my life in all of my books, right? I can pick up any book and remember who I was when I wrote it and what lessons I took while I was writing it from the book I wrote and also from the life I was living at that time, right? And even now, like I wrote False Start and I started writing that book before I found out I was pregnant, but I found out I was pregnant while I was writing it. And in that book, she finds out she's pregnant. And it was so fun to write through that. And
False Start is the latest one, right? Okay.
And I have never written a pregnancy into a book before. And I never thought I wanted to. And then here I am writing this and discovering this new side of myself and this, like, I don't know, just experiencing a newfound respect for, I mean, I've always said moms are superheroes. But I just never thought too deeply about pregnancy. And now that I have, I mean, it's just not even just pregnancy, but infertility and loss. And there's so much around being a mom that I never thought about. And I do think it's a really big part of being a woman, whether you want to be a mom or not. It's just something that I think
because even if you choose or are not able to, it's consuming.
Yeah, it's part of your story.
Yeah.
And also, gosh, doesn't it make you like think about your mom? Like now that I'm having a kid, I'm thinking about how old my mom was when she had us and what she went through and the things she did. And I'm like, how the hell did she hold it together? How did she do that? You know?
Today when I was on a plane, I was watching a mom carrying like the baby and she was like carrying and I was like,
she's doing everything.
Traveling with a kid? No. Like, if I have kids, we're just not traveling because this is wild. Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah, I agree. So shout out to all the moms.
Yeah, shout out to moms for real. And good dads, man. Millennial dads are really changing the game, I think.
I think so too. And it's really like, I went to go see one of my old college friends who is now like has been in a relationship with this wonderful girl, and they have a baby. Well, she's 4 now, but and watching him, like we used to like down shots, you know, like I went to Florida, so partying in Gainesville, if you ever experience, like we were doing all of that. And now watching him be a dad, I was like holding back tears the whole weekend. And then I was like, this is beautiful, because
so moving.
You are doing so much of what I think we've all talked about we lacked with our parents, right? And seeing that was so special that I'm like, I can't wait for all of you to be dads.
Dude. And I love seeing my friends be like moms, but also still be themselves. Cause I'm like, man, I wish I could have seen that. My mom, I love her so much, but she gave up everything for us. Like, she was just mom. Yeah. Right.
And that was like the norm.
That was the norm.
Yeah.
And now it's like these kids, like you watch your mom be mom, but mom is also a romance author. Mom is also, does yoga. Mom also has friends that she goes on trips with.
Right.
Dad has, his buddies and whatever. And mom and dad have a relationship that you are not a part of.
Right.
Right. I just think that's so cool.
Yeah.
And I just wonder what kind of generation that's going to raise, and how are they gonna feel about love and relationships, and who are they gonna be to their partners,
Yeah. Yeah. I think for a long time I thought I didn't want kids, but then I think I realized that I want kids with the right partner. And I think it's because seeing my mom and my grandma and most of the women in my family who have had kids lose themselves and their personality being a mom. And if that's what you want, that's totally fine. Like, I think that is what a lot of people get wrong about feminism. Like, feminism is being able to choose. If you want to be a stay-at-home mom, go off. Like,
absolutely,
all the power to you. But if you want to have kids and have a career, you don't have to choose between the two.
Yeah.
And I think for a long time, I thought I was always going to have to choose, because I always thought I'm going to be the primary caregiver because men are just going to be men, right?
Men are gonna be men.
And there are men now that have grown up who are showing that it doesn't have to be like that. And I think that that's really shifted my mind on, like, it's not about not having kids, it's about having kids with the right partner.
100%. I mean, if I would have had to give up writing to be a mom, I don't think I would have made that choice. And it's not like I'm so excited to meet my daughter. I'm so excited to have this life with her. But I also have a life that I love and that I want to keep living. I know it's going to shift and change with her in the picture. But if it wasn't for having a partner like Jack, who is not just going to meet halfway, but is like willing to carry more of the load, to be that primary caregiver in this situation, so that I can write and I can do the things that I want to do. Like, it's crazy to think, even in just like 50 years, how much has changed. Yeah. And how, like, the roles in the household have shifted, if you want them to. Right. It all just depends on who you are and what you want. We absolutely have friends who are in very traditional marriages and are super happy and love it. As long as that's what you want, that's what I want for you. Exactly. Yeah.
I know we talked a little bit about sexuality earlier, but is there any like advice or anything you would tell someone who is like beginning that journey and like embracing their sexuality and fully being able to be themselves?
Yeah. I would say prepare for the ups and downs of it, because it's not a linear trajectory. It's not just going to be like, now I'm starting this journey of embracing my sexuality and I'm just going to slowly get more and more comfortable with it. No, like, there's going to be times where you question it. There's going to be times that you wonder if you've overstepped a line or gone too far, or if you are too sexual, if you are a slut, if you are guilty for being this temptation, whatever. Right. So be ready for those, but just keep going and keep exploring, because when you really find that comfortable place of being like, I am who I am, this is what I like, this is what I enjoy, there's nothing wrong with it, then everybody else around you loses that power that they had over you. And I swear, especially the older I get, like, the more my fuck it button breaks, and it is so freeing. And then it's just like you live a more beautiful life, because you genuinely do not care what people think about you. And at the end of the day, they go on living their life. Yeah. You go on living yours. Right. They do not care. Like, they might call you a slut, but they literally don't care about you. Right. So just keep going.
I love that. And then what about any advice for people who are wanting to start trying pole?
Ooh, oh my gosh. Pole is amazing. If you are looking to start pole, first try to find a studio in your area. I think if you can go in person, that makes a big difference just because you can be surrounded by the pole community, and it's an amazing community to be a part. It's like the romance community, right? It's like all these women empowering each other.
Right.
But if not, then you can find lessons online, and that's just as great. But let go of any stigmas that you have around pole dancing. Ask yourself the tough questions. If you've got some stigmas around sex workers or strippers, why? And maybe try to break that down a little bit and just have fun, because when you get into your body and you realize the strength and grace and beauty that is in you, it literally makes you feel like you're a goddess. Like, it's incredible.
Has any part of your pregnancy made you feel that way?
Like a goddess?
Yeah.
Yes. I think especially when I really started to see my bump, right? Like for a long time, you just kind of look like you ate a burrito.
Yeah.
But then I remember walking by the mirror and I just had this like swollen belly, and like my thighs are bigger, and I've got like some cellulite in my thighs, and like my I don't even know. I was just holding, I felt like those statues of Aphrodite that you see, big boobs, big belly, big hips. And I was like, this is so feminine, badass energy.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to walk around naked all day. Like, do you see this?
Yeah.
I'm building life right now.
Well, what you said about pole made me think of like what I would think I would feel if I was pregnant. And I'm like, there has to be some...
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
And I mean, even on the days where you feel like, oh my God, I'm swollen and I'm hot and I'm tired and my hips hurt, it's like she'll move or something. And I'm like, oh yeah, that's why I feel this way.
Right.
And it's so badass. It is really cool. And I mean, I'm so excited for like the birth experience too. Like I can't wait to see what that's going to be like. And
are you going to try to do all natural?
No.
Okay.
I did debate unmedicated, and I think everyone, do what's right for you.
Right.
For me, I was like, I think I want an epidural so I can be comfortable. And I think we talked about this a little bit before the podcast was rolling, but we just found out that baby girls breech. So there is a possibility that I'm going to have to do a C-section, and that was not in my plan. But again, at first I was like devastated. I had a whole day of like grieving, like I'm not going to be able to labor. I'm not going to be able to push. And then I was like, I'm still going to be a mom. She's still going to be here, like, safe and sound. And, like, it's
and you still grew a whole ass life inside of you.
And C-sections are, like, major surgery.
Yeah.
So that's, like, a whole nother,
Right.
Anyway, but it'll be so interesting to see what happens, how she arrives, when she arrives, like, what we go through to get her here. And at the end of the day, like, I'm going to be a mom. And that just feels... insane. Like I know I'm not ready for it, but I feel ready. I'm like, I'm ready. And I don't know. It's just, this is the first lesson in going with the flow, right? It'll be such a good lesson for me in patience and in release, because I'm very type A. I'm very control everything. I go all the time. And this is going to force me to sort of like pump the brakes a little bit. So I'm excited. I think she's going to teach me just as much as I hope to teach her.
Oh, I love that. For readers who are new to you, what would be the first book they should pick up?
I mean, I'm going to throw you right into A Love Art of Whiskey.
Thank you.
Because
I
just feel like that's like my crown jewel. That's the one that if you want to know what I'm about, just read that book.
Yeah.
But if you're like, I can't do cheating, angst, whatever, that's totally understandable. Just go into Fair Catch and read my Red Zone Rival series. It's really feel good. It's college, spicy, like fun. And Blindside, which is book 2, was like my big book that blew up in 2022. So it's a good introduction to me.
Blindside was everything. Like Blindside, like Gianna, and I don't even remember his name,
Clay.
but oh my God, like I can't wait to the day that I find someone who's gonna like ask me to tab, because I'm not a tabber, but like I will tab the shit out of some things for you.
Oh my gosh.
To replay for me,
if you're gonna like use it as a playbook, like absolutely.
Yeah. What is your favorite book that you've written?
I wrote a book called On the Way to You, and I think that's my favorite book that I've written. It's a road trip romance, but it's basically I took the saddest boy in the world with like deep depression who grew up with everything, and then the girl who grew up with nothing who's like this happy ball of sunshine, put them in a car together and sent them on a road trip. So it was really fun to write, and it's beautiful and it's moving and it'll make you cry. So if you like to cry,
I'd love to cry. Say less. I'm gonna cue that up on my Kindle next. Okay, and the last question: fuck, marry, kill.
Okay.
Any trope.
Ooh, any trope. Fuck, marry, kill. Okay, I'm gonna fuck fake dating.
Okay.
I am going to marry right person, wrong time. And I'm going to kill... Oh, this is hard. I'm going to kill accidental pregnancy.
A great choice. I love this one. Yeah. Okay, where can people find you?
Oh my gosh, I'm everywhere that you are. So if you, I'm on Instagram is like my favorite place to hang out. I think TikTok. I'm on Facebook still. I am on Threads. You won't find me much on X, but I'm there, but I'm not really there. And my newsletter. Like if you're gonna really want to be cued in with me, just go to my website, sign up for my newsletter. That is the best way for me to keep in touch with you, just because social media can like hide me at any point.
Right, right. And what's the website?
It's kandisteiner.com.
Perfect.
Yes.
Well, thank you for having us, Kandi. This was so much fun. Oh, well, you can find us on... you can find Romance Unleashed Pod at Romance Unleashed Pod on YouTube, TikTok, and Instagram. Bye.